Okay, I think we're live. This is exciting. Can someone comment saying that we're live, just to check that all's working well? Live. Exciting. Can someone comment? This is exciting. Oh gosh, I'm getting feedback. Someone comment saying that we're live, just to check that all's working well. Live. Exciting. Can someone comment? This is exciting. Oh, I think that was me. I'm so sorry. I think I had the other tab open. Okay, now that I've muted the other tab, I think we're all good. So, is it worth... I feel really embarrassed. That was totally me there. Is it worth everyone going around with name, college, year, and what we're studying?
I'll start. Hi, I'm Inés at St John's College and I'm a final year DPhil student.
Jessie?
Hi everyone. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, I'm Jessie. I'm a first year student at St Hugh's College and I study music.
Melinda?
Hi everyone, I'm Melinda and I'm a first year computer scientist and philosopher at University College Oxford.
Rowan?
Hi, I'm Rowan and I'm a first year studying engineering at Wadham College.
And Yethrib?
Hey, I'm Yethrib. I'm a first year studying medicine at Magdalen.
And I'm Jenna. I'm in my second year doing Spanish at Lincoln. Right, now the introductions are done. We have many people telling us we're live, which is great. But any questions?
Someone says they've been offered a place at St John's. Congratulations, Albany. That's awesome. Well, I'm obviously going to be very biased, but I would totally say that St John's is definitely the best college. They have accommodation for all undergraduate years. They have, I imagine, awesome tutors in your subject, and most things are heavily subsidised, so everything's a little bit cheaper at St John's. Congratulations to you too, Zara.
I have to say, I went on a tour around St John's when I was doing an Access project. I was slightly envious about how much free stuff you get.
I was going to say, I feel very creepy saying this, but I think I saw you at lunch at St John's a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. I saw you on high table and I was like, well, it might be a bit creepy if I just like start waving from the other side of the room, but I saw you.
Yeah, that's when we got taken. I was taking around year 12s trying to show them St Hugh's was the best, which it is, but you do get
John's got beautiful gardens as well. I remember going around, so beautiful.
Someone in the chat is also asking, they have an offer from Teddy Hall. I've seen Teddy Hall very briefly, so I don't know if I'm really the best person to talk about it, but it seemed like quite a nice college. It's obviously not as big as St John's, but the community there seemed very nice. They had a very nice bar. And I don't really know much else about Teddy Hall, so that wasn't very helpful.
I have a question about engineering. They said, what's it like in first year and do you have any ideas on what you want to specialise in? First year is crazy because you do an general engineering course at Oxford and you study like everything from like bridges and fluid mechanics to circuits. I would like to specialise in electronics, I think, but I'm saying first year, so it depends.
There are many questions. Where are you all from? Was it hard getting in from your respective cities or countries? I think that's quite a good one. Anyone want to lead?
Jessie. I will take it.
Oh, I'm a Londoner. So I think London is overrepresented at Oxford. It's quite close by as well, so I wouldn't necessarily say if you're looking solely at location, it's difficult to get in as such from London. It's definitely quite overrepresented in Oxford. I think it definitely location, like regional kind of variations, probably more difficult if you're not from the south, because unfortunately at the moment there is an issue with that. But there are loads of different communities here to kind of help support each other. And all of my friends, actually, none of them are from London that I've made friends with in Oxford. I'm the only Londoner from around the country and abroad as well. So there's definitely variation, but yeah.
I don't think it's like necessarily harder to get in from anywhere to Oxford. Like the application process is relatively fair. It's just that, you know, certain areas of the UK or certain types of people are like slightly overrepresented at Oxford, but it's like, I don't know, it's not
like,
hard. Don't ever believe that it's harder to get in from any background to Oxford.
I feel like it doesn't make much of an impact on your application, and I feel like a lot of people think that Oxford puts a lot of emphasis on where you come from, what school you're from, or where you sort of applied from, and I think that that's not really something they take into consideration as much as it, in a sort of negative context. And if it's ever taken into consideration, it's only to help your application. If it's sort of an area where they don't usually get applications from, or something like that. And having actually applied from, I actually went to school in New Delhi, and so I applied from a school that had near no history of applying to Oxford or Cambridge. And so I thought there was a lot of like a lack of information in terms of what was required, the different steps of the application process and things like that. So I feel like it is a little harder in terms of information and in terms of understanding the application process. But I think that it's important to remember that Oxford doesn't really look into where you've come from unless it's going to actually benefit you in any sort of way. It's never going to discriminate against you sort of negatively.
They have a flagging system. So if you come from a UK postcode, which has either a low percentage of adults who went into higher education or young people going into higher education, your application is flagged, which means that tutors will have to give a very clear reason explained to the faculty or the department if they don't invite you to interview, because they recognise their difference.
I'd also like to jump in. So as a DPhil student, I haven't actually done interviews myself, but other people who are DPhil students have helped out with them, and obviously supervisors and other groups conduct interviews. And I wouldn't worry too much if you're not, you know, depending on what school you go to, I wouldn't worry too much about that, because really they're not looking at that at all. And they do say they can tell when someone's clearly had interview practice and hasn't, but ultimately they're just looking at, are you enthusiastic about your subject and can you think critically about it? And they want to be able to see your thought process. And ultimately, interview preparation can make you maybe give off a better impression or maybe appear calmer, but in the end, those are skills that you will either have or not, regardless of background. And to answer the question, I know I sound really British, but I'm actually from Spain, from Sevilla. So my application process was quite different because it wasn't the standard A-level or GCSE. And like Melinda, my school doesn't really have much of a background of sending people to Oxford. So I don't know, I remember there was a drop-down list and my school did not exist there. So the process was somewhat changed. But I don't feel that necessarily disadvantaged me in any way. I felt I was slightly less informed about Oxford and as to what to expect, but I do think that everyone is given a fair chance, and it is ultimately based on your abilities and ultimately if you care about the subject and look like you would be willing to put in that work.
I think that's quite a lot of information about regions and what's taken into account when you apply. I'm just trying to think of how we should go about processing these.
Here's a question for Yethrib about medicine.
I think my Wi-Fi is being a bit weird, so there's a massive lag. I don't know if I'm hearing this late or...
Do you get the question about medicine? Is it homework, sort of essays or case studies? how does it work?
So we don't really get homework as you do in school, but we get set essays usually, and usually they're about 1.5 a week. So one every week and then one every other week. And that's sort of like the recommended amount. But on top of that, some colleges like to set problem sheets. So they give you like a set of perhaps clinical problems or something that you could work your way through. And then you would discuss it in the tutorial at the end of the week or in the following week. So it's mostly essays, but some problem sheets can come in as well.
Arabella's asked if we've got any information about Keeble. I don't particularly, other than that I go and see a lot of plays at the Keeble O'Reilly.
It's closest to like a lot of the science departments, so we're quite jealous of like their 2-minute walk in the morning, but that's not it.
Yeah, it's quite big.
It's next to St John's, so look out for John's people stealing bricks. That's what they say. It's a very pretty college, and yeah, very central. So it's great for science area.
Joshua's asked how big a factor are GCSEs. I think that means to say GCSRD. We're assuming that's GCSEs. Yeah. I think, like, I guess we've spoken about this in various videos, but just to run over it here.
I mean, Oxford does like look at your GCSEs, and unless I think like you're applying for medicine, unfortunately, they contextualize your GCSEs, and they are a small part of your application if you have a good interview. They won't necessarily mean that if you have bad GCSEs or bad GCSEs that you won't get a place. It really does depend. Never not apply because you think your GCSEs are bad. They're probably not that bad, and you never know.
And I think that now, considering the fact that the sort of reform in A levels and the fact you will no longer have AS levels to show, what we've been hearing from college ambassadors is that they are looking at GCSEs a little more than they were before because they no longer have any solid grades to look at and they only have predicted grades to look at. So there is this sort of increased emphasis. However, looking at the comparison between Oxford and Cambridge, there's going to be that emphasis a lot more, was a lot more at Cambridge because of the entrance exams. But remember, with Oxford, because we have entrance exams and because there are separate tests to go through, it's a sort of a holistic view in that sense, and that there's so many different aspects to look at. So if you do think that, oh, my GCSE grades aren't perfect, they're not great, that I haven't got a string of A's, then I wouldn't necessarily stop there and think, okay, that's the end of it, because there are so many different aspects of your application for them to look at that there's no point getting caught up on one bit, and there's no point even getting caught up on a number and saying, okay, someone's got in and they've got 10 A's, or someone else has got 8 and I've only got 6 or 5. It really depends on the person and the application as a whole. So never look at GCSEs and think that they're going to sort of hinder your application. They're just one small aspect of the whole thing.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Also, to expand on that, they do contextualize it. So someone was asking about if they look at your school or college, and they do. So they look at how you performed with respect to your school and the national average as well. So if you did relatively well, you'd sort of be considered with higher regard. So it's just one part of the application process, and it is contextualized. They also look at, like they said, entrance exams and other bits and bobs as well.
Emma's asked what college has the best location in our opinion. I'm going to do a quick Lincoln plug. I hadn't actually heard of Lincoln or didn't know where it was, but I think the Tull Street colleges are really great in terms of proximity to Cornmarket and the High Street, but I guess everything's got its own like benefit, like we were saying earlier in terms of sciences, you might want to go somewhere near Keeble. So any other thoughts about location and colleges?
It's worth saying that all of the Oxford colleges are just pretty central and are pretty good locations. Like, you're never going to be a far away walk from, you know, getting your department or getting groceries or going out in the evening. There's not a huge walk for pretty much all colleges, I think.
As someone from St Hugh's, the famously far out college in Oxford, I can completely agree with what Rowan says. So we're the furthest out college for undergraduate students, and it takes me the music department is also the furthest faculty from St. Hugh's, and it takes me a grand total of 7 minutes to cycle there in the morning. So yeah, it really isn't an issue. And also something to point out is quite a few colleges, this is again worth looking into, quite a few colleges chuck you out for second year into college-owned accommodation, but not on their main site. And often those are actually further away than St. Hugh's. So something worth bearing in mind.
I can vouch for that because second years University College live on Staverton Road, which is actually 4 roads further than St. Hugh's. So that's definitely a thing.
That is definitely true. And again, someone's ideal location might vary. So you might want proximity, but again, I remember Jessie mentioning that you actually quite like sort of not being bang in the city centre. So taking into account what Meninda just said, I would say St. John's is probably quite nice because they do generally guarantee all 3 years. And I actually live in off-site accommodation belonging to St. John's, and it's still quite central. So again, it will probably depend on where you study and what you want anyway, but Oxford is so small anyway that really when you say something is far away, you're saying it's more than 10 minutes on foot.
Yeah, also like Anasis picks up on, it's worth seeing how many years colleges offer on site in terms of accommodation and where you live if you are off site, like with Staverton Road. I have a feeling it might be good to do a bit of a quick fire because I'm just looking at how many questions we've got. Okay. Opinions of Worcester College, Sophie's asked. I've been to Worcester for a formal. I've also looked around the college in general. I just think it's really pretty nice.
It has a lovely lake.
They have ducks.
And a good bar.
Beautiful college, and I think their off-site accommodation is actually quite nice, and some of it at least is actually quite close to Worcester itself.
Cool. What coding language does Oxford courses focus on?
Well, to answer that, in computer science, they don't really focus on like generic mainstream programming languages like Java and C++. Contrary to popular belief, they actually want you to do that in your own spare time and learn those yourself. They focus on languages like functional programming languages like Haskell, and currently in imperative programming, we're doing Oberon and Scala. So they're sort of very niche programming languages, but ones that will sort of help you understand the basics so that you can go and figure out larger, sort of more mainstream ones yourself. But just to add to that, the computer science course in general is very theoretical as opposed to computer science at other universities. So that's definitely something to take into account when you're applying.
Great. I think something that's been coming up a lot is people having a bit of confusion or not knowing exactly how the application process works. So I think we can do like, is it possible to do like a very quick rundown of, okay, this is the Oxford application timeline?
I don't know if I'm really the best person for that, just because it was slightly different coming from abroad, but I can remember it really well because of all the grief it caused, because I found it like 2 weeks before the deadline. So Oxford, you have to apply by, I believe, the 15th of October, or at least it's an October deadline. So you're applying an entire year in advance. You have to, obviously, you fill in your personal details on UCAS, so UCAS. I will type that in the chat. I'm sure everyone is familiar with it. So you put in your personal details. I think you have to select your school, or if your school isn't there, as was my case, then you have to register it or do something separate. That might have changed. You have your predicted grades, and I think they also asked for some previous grades. They had a lot of selections, so it, I think, had about an equivalence for about every marking system. So IB, I did Bachillerato, which is I get the feeling it's starting to go obsolete in Spain, or at least there are other ways of grading your schoolwork in Spain now. And then the most important bit is you've got your personal statement where you have to write an A4 about why basically you are the person that they should take on. And I think that is the single most important bit. I noticed someone asked what insurance universities we had. In my case, because I was applying from Spain, I actually only applied to Oxford because it was the only place I was interested in, and you can't apply to Oxford and Cambridge because otherwise I would have just studied in Spain. So that was a good thing because it meant that I could make my application specific to Oxford and why I wanted to do biological sciences. But obviously, if you're applying to multiple universities, then you might be thinking about making an application that is slightly more general. So that's something to think about. And I remember it being quite important. You know, you want to show why you're passionate about the subject, but also what experience you've got and maybe anything notable that you might have done at school, such as extracurriculars. The other thing you had to do was to get references from teachers. And again, in my case, normally you should never see your reference. But because my school wasn't registered and my school didn't really know very much about applying to Oxford, then in the end what they did was they emailed the reference to me to copy and paste it. But that should not happen. You should never get to see your reference. And I think that was pretty much it. You had to pay at the end. And I remember that my application got blocked because our credit card didn't work online. So it was a huge headache, and we had to ring them up from Spain and ask them to unblock the account so we could submit our application.
Yeah, so that's kind of the UCAS bit. And then from then on, you get kind of more Oxford specific. So quite a few subjects will ask you to do an admissions test, and you can find out if that is you online on the website. And then after that, you might also be asked to submit written work, which has a deadline of the 10th of November, I think it is, or somewhere around that. Again, if that is you, you will find out online. And then it's interviews if you're invited to interview in December, and you stay in Oxford for a couple of days, have a couple of interviews, and then you find out if you get an offer in January.
I'm just going to link the UCAS page on personal statements in the chat, just because we've had a couple of questions about number of characters and things like that. And the UCAS website is quite good in terms of tips, and they've got video guides talking you through the application process as well. So I guess we could leave that there.
It's been coming up a lot is, what did people do between getting their offer and if it was kind of, if they were still doing their A-levels or equivalent qualification and getting the grades? Does anyone have any advice?
Try not to panic, kept my head down.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to remember that you've done the sort of the bit that wasn't in your control. And so once you've gotten the offer, it's important to remember that now's the bit that's all on you. And so you've got to work, and you've got, if you haven't already got the grades, in which case, if you have, then great, you can relax for a bit. But if you haven't, then it's important to sort of use that as sort of motivation to study for your exams, whether they're A-levels or IB or whatever you're taking. It can seem very easy to procrastinate, but then if you have an offer, be it Oxford or any other university that you really want to go to, it's important to sort of turn that around, turn that into motivation to study or work hard for whatever you're doing, just to make sure that now that you've gone through all of this, you actually just do the full circle and actually meet your grades.
In my case, it was slightly the opposite situation. So the requirements from me were we had to get 90% in your bachillerato, which the way my school works, and generally I got pretty good grades, so I wasn't too concerned about not hitting that mark. And also public exams didn't count, which are the ones that you sit down and do outside of school. And honestly, the grading on that can be pretty random and can actually really push a mark down. So in that regard, I was mostly confident that I'd probably get the grades unless something terrible happened in the last year. And it might happen to someone. I'm sure I'm not the only person who's felt this, but I remember actually feeling terrified and worrying whether I would be good enough for Oxford, sort of even before being in Oxford. I know some people I've spoken with have definitely felt that way. So if by any chance you feel like that, I would just add that you definitely they have made the right choice in choosing you, and if you do get the grades, you will be fine in Oxford.
All good. Just want to say hi to Molly, who I know is in the comments, and lots of people are saying what a huge fan they are of her videos. Her videos on Oxford are great. What else? Lots of things about PPE. Though none of us study it, there's quite a lot of PPEs that link in. I think in first year they've got 3 papers, so I guess though the workload is like kind of fairly high, it's easy to box it into 3 different topics, and they get to specialise, I think, in second year, 2 of them, or continue for 3. I can't really talk that much about it. I guess for all of these things, like someone's asked if we have any knowledge of human sciences and stuff as well, we could probably get you in touch with someone if you wanted to talk further if we don't do that subject.
I'm putting a link to the Owlsy Alternative Prospectus in the comments, and they go through each subject and they have stuff from students studying those subjects. So if it's subject we don't study, it's definitely worth checking that out. Or the previous Oxflogers. So I think it was Dan from 2013 did human sciences. So have a look at his videos.
Great. Scott's asked what the nightlife's like at Oxford. Any contributions?
Well, I think that before I came to Oxford, I thought that you wouldn't really go out that much. But first term, I feel like everyone goes out a lot because you suddenly just throw into the deep end. And after Freshers Week, a lot of people thought that was warm when it really wasn't. But I'd say nightlife is quite good in Oxford. You couldn't really compare it to, I'd say, like metropolitan cities like London, but there definitely are a lot of people going out quite often. So if you ever wanted to, there are definitely people going out, so you would definitely be able to go. But I think that if you look at Cambridge, there are like 3 to 4 clubs, but I think Oxford has a variety, about, I'd say, 8 to 10 different ones, I think. And so there is always something else going on, whether that's, and I think that with nightlife, it's not always clubbing that people are interested in. There's a lot of sort of events that are happening in pubs and even in like coffee shops and ice cream parlors like G&D, where there's just like little gigs happening at night, which quite often, and it's quite nice to see that sort of mixed events. And so whatever you're interested in, whatever you like to do, there's usually something or the other going on.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Cella's very good for like smaller gig type things. Yeah, I do like nightlife at Oxford.
So someone was asking if any of us have ever felt guilty about receiving an offer, and I wanted to get like you guys' opinions. So it's quite, I think, like common to feel maybe like you don't deserve it, or like it was an accident and they did a typo and sent you an offer letter or something. And I think a lot of people can feel like that at one point or another. But I think you do have to remember that the people who selected you are experts in their field. They spoke to you, they looked through your whole application, and they saw potential in you. They believe that you can do well and that you would be suitable for the course. And it's common to feel guilty, but I don't think it's worth it to let that stay in your mind. If you've received an offer from Oxford, then you're definitely worthy of it.
There's been a couple of questions as well about mental health, and I'm trying to find what the specific one was, but the general vibe was how much of an impact, or how much it might, not entirely sure. But yeah, I know that a couple of years ago, Ellie did a lot of videos about mental health, and Ace has done one. I'm hoping to do more mental health stuff next term. Yeah, and Ace, any thoughts?
Mental health wise, I think Oxford is slowly picking up the slack, but I still think there's quite a bit to go. There are certainly lots of different places that you can go to for help. So there is a counselling service and the disability advisory service, and you can go So the counselling service tends to have a bit of a waiting list, but it's still a lot shorter than the NHS. It tends to be on the order of 2 to 6 weeks, is what I've generally heard. Unless it's really urgent, then they might be able to find something sooner, but I wouldn't necessarily count on that. That being said, I've found the counselling service is more for smaller problems, but as soon as it might involve something that's perhaps more pathological or something that you might really want to see a doctor for, they're not always quite so helpful. The NHS waiting lists, there's Talking Space, which I went to and was about 6 months, and then they referred me to the adult mental health services, and that was 2.5 years. So had I just been doing an undergraduate, I would not have been eligible to receive that help because I wouldn't have been able to guarantee that I was in the country. That I think is pretty bad, to be honest. In addition to that, I know St John's has a college counsellor, and I'm pretty sure other colleges will do as well, but I don't know what the status is for each college. Obviously, there's lots of private therapists in the Oxford area, but that might not be ideal because it's not free, unlike the NHS. And then there are other sources of help as well, which again would be more for, I'd say more for minor things. If it's more something you would want to speak to someone, there are peer supporters in every college, and there are graduates and undergraduates who do that. There's Oxford Nightline, which is a service that runs from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. from 0th week to 9th week, and also during the interview period. And basically it's a listening service. It's similar to the Samaritans, but specific to students. And I bet I'm missing something out, but I think that's an overview of what mental health support is available. Oh yeah, of course, most colleges, most MCRs and JCRs will have welfare officers. So I think Jenna, you're a welfare officer. I used to be welfare officer at St John's, so go watch Jenna's vlogs because she's talked about it quite a bit.
Thank you. I think the only thing I've got to add to that is, there's a lot of like student support as well. There's student minds that run support groups, and obviously peer supporters who are just like everyday students in your college you can go and talk to. I think in more of a like, how might it affect your work and your general life capacity? I found it quite tough. I think it can get to you more than you expect, and I've actually decided to step down from the role of welfare officer at my college, like a term early, like half a term early, to focus on my own mental health. So I think it's worth saying that it's not like a sink or swim type environment. If you want to seek support or try and like change around commitments to try and prioritize yourself, then I found people to be incredibly supportive, and everyone tends to just really want what's best for you and want you to focus on yourself.
I quite like this question about how true are college stereotypes. Does anyone want to talk about that? So I go to Wadham College, and like it has a stereotype, like not a stereotype necessarily, but it's known for being quite liberal, which I think for Wadham is not really untrue, because I think people often apply to Wadham knowing that the college is quite liberal. But I don't think that there's still quite a lot of people within Wadham with lots of different lives and opinions as well. So I don't know. Does anyone else have an opinion on college stereotypes?
I think like any stereotype, mostly just something that's funny but not necessarily true. Because obviously certain colleges are perhaps slightly, for example, I've got the stereotype that, I don't know, Mansfield sounds like the sporty college, and at least back when I was undergrad, most of the sportiest people I knew were from Mansfield. But then again, there are tons of people inside a college, so it's quite easy to get confirmation bias, where as soon as someone matches the description you associate with that college, then you would say they meet that stereotype. That being said, there might be smaller things where you might prefer to opt for one college versus another one. I think that was really terribly worded.
I just want to pick up, there are a couple of things in the comments kind of about scholarships and finances. And I don't know, personally, I can't answer that. So, but something, I'm firstly, if anyone else has any comments, that'd be really cool. But also, it's really important to check the website for finances, because that is the most up-to-date information. And they have a scholarship search on the website, which you can find out any money you are entitled to or can apply for in Oxford. I'll find the link. But yeah, if anyone else has any.
Yeah, I guess in terms of like financial support, as far as I'm aware, there's some university-wide things that will be on the website, and also some college-specific scholarships that you can apply for as well, and also subject-specific ones as well. Like I'll just get emails every now and again with modern languages specific. Okay. Anyone else got any questions they want to take?
I saw one asking about college pets earlier, but I'm not entirely sure if they mean, does college have pets, or are we allowed to have pets? If it's the latter, at least not so in St. John's, unless you had, for instance, a guide dog, but again, that wouldn't really count as pet, to be honest. I know there's no dogs or cats here. I have unofficially kept insects, but St. John's is not to know about that at all. And I know many colleges do have some kind of communal dog or cat. We actually have a cat who comes into our back garden on occasions, but I would say in general, I wouldn't expect to be able to keep a cat in your college room, or a cat or a dog or any animal. And likewise, if you were living out, you'd probably have to look at the terms and conditions of the letting agency to see if they allow pets or not. Some do, others won't.
I got a question about PAT advice, so physics admissions test. I've done a video on this, but I just say learn the syllabus thoroughly, practice the past papers, and don't get too stressed because the pass mark varies each year and they don't expect you to get 100% in it.
I've seen one about how much does Oxford take into account being a first generation? And I'm going to presume you mean a first generation student. Tell me if I'm wrong. But yeah, so if your parents haven't been to university, I'm not sure Oxford know. I think that you might tick a box on the UCAS form, but I'm not even sure if Oxford gets sent now, or if it's just for a kind of UCAS own thing. So yeah, it's not taken into account as such, but personally, I haven't found it to make a difference at all. I made a video about it, so you can check that out. And there's the Oxford First Generation Student Society, where yeah, we get together and have socials and do campaigns and just kind of raise awareness that it is a thing.
Great. Molly's asked, and I think there was another question about the image of PP in the press, thoughts on Oxford's image in the press, which is quite interesting. Might be a good video idea, actually.
I think that it's important to remember that anything that happens at the University of Oxford gets sort of commercialised, and it's spiced up a lot in the media, and it's important to remember that it's not always as controversial as it is to be. So, for example, it was a couple of weeks ago that I'd gone to the Oxford Union for a talk given by Anna Fendi, and I think it was probably 3 or 4 students got up near the end before it had finished, when there was still about 10 to 15 minutes left, just because she had gone over time. Now that would be understandable because as a student you have so many different commitments. You could have a tutorial, you could have something. However, I think it was 2 days later in like 2 or 3 very popular newspapers, and I think one of them was The Guardian as well. They had these large headlines saying Oxford students disrespect worldwide leader and things like that. And I was just like, it was 3 or 4 students who subtly got up and left from the back. However, the media had to make this big deal about how she was disrespected and how people weren't showing enough respect for sort of foreign figures and public icons and things like that. And it's important to remember how anything related to the university will be publicised in a way that may not accurately represent what actually happened. So to take everything that you see or hear about Oxford in the media with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, I'd also say something when I've been doing kind of access and admissions stuff. Some of the training they do, they are very cautious. Oxford is very, very cautious about the press. It's kind of what Melinda was saying. Any kind of slight thing which could be interpreted as Oxford being elitist and all of these kind of stereotypes, any possible interpretation of that will be completely exploited by the press and often made untrue and exaggerated. So definitely, as Melinda was saying, take the press with a very large pinch of salt.
I saw a few questions on whether what the LGBT climate is in Oxford. So I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about that. Personally, compared to where I came from, which is Seville, I think Seville is considerably more liberal now, but I feel Oxford, I'd be much more comfortable being out in the open in Oxford than in Seville. I've seen plenty of LGBTQ flags. There is Plush, which as far as I'm aware is the only official LGBTQ nightclub. It's becoming increasingly obvious. I have not been out recently, so I don't know if that has changed or not. So personally, I'd say it's quite accepting, but I also wouldn't go as far as saying it's perfect. I have had friends say that they have received homophobic remarks, or there have been a few things here and there that haven't made them feel as safe as otherwise, but in general, I'd say it's reasonably okay. I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts on that.
I think that in general, the LGBTQ environment at Oxford is quite inclusive in the sense that you'll see a lot of participation from those that may identify with LGBTQ and those that don't as well. And so for that reason, I think that there's a general collective accepting environment in Oxford. However, I feel that in itself, it's sort of almost, it's not a great representation of sort of LGBTQ life in reality, because Oxford is such a accepting and sort of liberal free environment that it may be, as I've heard from people say, a utopia in itself. And so it's important to remember that while it may be a very sort of free and a great place to be yourself and be who you are, it's important to remember that at the same time, it may not be an accurate representation of how people in the outside world are, or who views or reflect the views of everyone else. And so I think that Oxford is a really, really great place just to honestly be who you are, be yourself, because the majority of the people, and I think on the whole, it's widely accepted, and there's a very, very there are very small and rare cases of discrimination. And when and if the college find out, or when and if it's brought to the attention of people, there's always going to be a way to resolve it, and there's always there people to help you in whatever support you may require.
Emma's asked what we think about 8-week terms. I'm personally not a fan. But I think it's just one of those things about Oxford that just is.
Some people love them, some people don't. I personally would prefer the term to be more spread out. But some people love being able to go home for 6 weeks, and that really appeals to them, so it depends on the person.
Yeah, I find 8-week terms, obviously because they're quite intense, very tiring. But then equally, I'm kind of like the 6 weeks back at home and then 8 weeks, I find it a bit kind of unsettling because you're constantly moving and you can't leave your stuff in Oxford in some cases. So yeah, there are plus sides and downsides, but yeah, it just depends.
Yeah, I think it's quite a contrast, because when you're here, it's sort of 8 weeks of jam-packed work, and then you get home and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I have time to relax, but I also have to study for collections. So I feel like personally, I would prefer a term that was maybe 10 weeks long, and the work, like Rowan said, to be more spread out. or maybe have like a reading week in the middle, because 8 weeks of continuous work, and I'm not sure if it's the same with everyone, but when you have a schedule that is the same week after week, it gets quite repetitive and quite monotonous, so you just need a break in the middle.
Very quick question from Fred is, do they expect them to be totally empty in the holidays? And at Lincoln, yes, you have to move everything out.
The same here.
We get 2 boxes in storage, and these can be however big you like, so long as they can be carried between 2 people. So yeah, see how much you can stuff in a box, and you get 5 if you're international.
Yeah, it varies between colleges, but generally there is some sort of vacation storage, but I guess it depends on your the amount of time that your accommodation contract works for as well. Like at Lincoln in first and second year, you've got to move everything out after 8 weeks, but if you're in third year, your contracts are longer.
Someone asked how important are collections at Oxford? So collections are the exams you do after you come back from your 6-week holidays in between terms. And I mean, they're important in that your tutors look at them and they're marking your progress, but they don't count for anything. And if you don't do well, you're not going to be told off because you're kind of responsible for your own learning. And yeah, I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts on collections. I've only done one. No? Yeah, I've only done one.
Yeah, they're pretty much like mock exams. They're important to sort of like monitor your own progress, but they don't count for anything, so don't take them too seriously. And it also depends on the college that you go to as well. So my tutors don't really care too much about collections, but some other colleges may.
I'd say in St. John's, back when we did collections, I remember our tutors were a little bit lax on them. So there were a couple of terms where they said, they felt they were confident in our progress. So we won't actually set any collections, or they were very informal collections. But in most cases, it's not something that counts towards your grade, but really just tells the tutors how you're getting on. And particularly if you're struggling in some areas, then they know what to focus on for that term to bring you up to speed by the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly how tutors use them. It's not really like a test at school, like a mock at school, where they just want to see, okay, where do they think you stand? It's more of it's the tutor's job to sit there and go over what you don't understand, and the collection sort of helps them see that, because many times what I realized is that something that I thought that I was good at, I actually wasn't very good at. And so it's almost just clear evidence for tutors to see, okay, this is what we should be focusing on next term, or maybe you don't have the right exam skills. And I think at the time you think collections are this really daunting experience, but it's a really, really good system in that by the time you come to prelims or your exams, you've been through that environment, you've done so many practices that it doesn't seem as daunting anymore. So it's really important to remember that it's just one attempt at exams you're going to take later.
Any other questions that we want to?
Someone asked, is it realistic to apply with less than 7 A stars at GCSE? I have less than 7 A stars at GCSE. Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, and I think Rebecca asked, I think this is a good time to do this because it's about halfway through. For anyone who's come in late, running through who we are, what we do. Should we go in the same order we did last time? Because I think on our screens it shows up left to right.
Sure, we could do left to right.
Sorry,
Jessie.
It's got it. Hi, I'm Jessie. I'm a first year studying music at St. Hugh's College.
Hi, I'm Meninda. I'm a first year computer scientist and philosopher studying at University College.
Rowan, sorry, I feel like this only works.
I think it's like in relation to you. Anyway, hi, I'm Rowan. I'm a first year studying engineering at Wadham College.
Hi, I'm Yathrib. I'm a first year and I'm studying medicine at Magdalen.
Hi, I'm Ines. I'm a final year DPhil student studying insect flight biomechanics, and I'm at St John's.
I'm Jenna. I'm a second year doing Spanish, so at Lincoln. Okay, we've run through again. This is great. Couple of questions on accommodation. I think my go-to advice for that is have a look at college websites, because it can vary, and they'll tell you things like bed sizes, what they provide, and how much contracts costs and things like that. Has anyone got anything else they want to say about accommodation?
If you're a musician at St. Peter's, you get a bigger room.
Same if you're a music scholar at Lincoln.
Yeah, it's because you get a piano in your room, so you get the biggest room in college. So just apply to music and sorted.
Molly says, "Well, I wouldn't give for a reading week." I feel the same way. How did we use past papers to revise? Asks James.
For Oxford exams or for?
You didn't specify. I'm not sure.
I think Yathrib and I made a video on our revision advice for A-level and GCSE, and just to run it through quickly, we basically said for sciences they are amazing and incredibly helpful. Although someone in the comments did very clearly point out that because of the new specifications there are less exam papers, but what I'd say to that is if you can Google enough you will find enough questions. So yeah, it depends on the subject, but they're generally very helpful. For humanities, even if you don't have a mark scheme, I still thought they were helpful, just for my own ability to think I can actually get through an essay, which I wouldn't know if I didn't do a past paper.
Anyone else got comments on past papers? Otherwise, I think there's a DPhil living costs question for MAs potentially.
Yes, I saw someone asking about DPhil stipends. Again, that's going to vary a lot depending on what your stipend is. I'm on one of the BBSRC granted stipends. Thank you, EU. I'd say it's definitely on the lower end of what I've seen going for stipends, and honestly, I'd say I live quite well off it. Obviously, you're not going to be able to have, a standard of living where you're in a very expensive flat, or, going on trips all the time. But I'd certainly say I live quite comfortably off it. And to be honest, each time it comes in, I find I have a little bit of a cushion left over from previous installments. So it's quite nice to have that, and it does go further than it seems. And obviously you have to take into account that being a student, first of all, you don't get taxed and you don't have to pay council tax. So obviously those are two big chunks that if I were earning the same amount but not a student, then I wouldn't have.
Yathrib, there's been a couple of questions about whether any medics have got in with below 7 A stars at GCSE. It's weirdly specific, but it's come up quite a few times.
So I'm not entirely sure what the actual stats are, but generally at university, we don't really ask people what grades they have, so I wouldn't really know. But I also, no one actually asked someone else what GCSEs they got. If you want to make sure, you could always email the admissions tutors, and I could put their email or their website in the comments.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning just how little people ask about, I don't know what the majority of my friends got at GCSE or A level.
Someone was asking earlier about the clinical contact that we get in the first few years of medicine. So because Oxford has quite a traditional medicine course, we have the first 3 years, which are mainly, so they're the preclinical years. They're mainly lectures, labs, tutorials, and just not any clinical contact. And the last 3 years, we do lots of hospital rotations and lots of clinical stuff. So we get almost no clinical contact in the first 3 years, but we do have GP placements. So twice a term, we go to a GP clinic and speak to patients and GPs about the patient-doctor relationship and about for example, a specific condition that we're learning in lectures, and then we get to see an actual patient with that condition and learn about how that's impacted their life. So it's not much, but it's a little bit of contact that we get.
There's a question about how strict the university is on narrowly missed offers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know, but I do know people who have narrowly missed offers. Either they've narrowly missed them and unis still accepted them, or they had a reason why they didn't get the grades. Still aim to get the grades, but yes, some people do. Uni still takes them.
Something I'd add, and I was actually talking to my tutor about this. He said that for people who miss their grades, generally, in the majority of cases, unless there are extenuating circumstances, you might not be so lucky, but if you have kind of an access case, as it were, if you're underrepresented at university for those kind of reasons, there's possibility. But yeah, it depends on the tutor. Ultimately, it's the senior tutor of a college that makes the decision.
Yeah, I'd agree. I know cases where people have missed their offers and got in, and people who've missed their offers and haven't. So I guess it just depends on those factors and on the college and the tutor.
It's a question here. Do you ever have to deal with tutors who aren't organised or who you don't get on with? I'd be curious to hear what people think about that.
All my tutors are lovely, so.
I think that I haven't had any direct experience with tutors that aren't organised, but I have heard from like very close friends in other subjects, which I shall not name, that say that, for example, if they hand in an essay, they don't get the essay back for like 3 or 4 weeks, and by that time they've already written 2 more essays and they haven't been marked. And so I think that what's important at that point is to just message the tutor, just be like, let them know, is there feedback coming, or ask them where they are with the feedback, or when you plan on getting it, because you have to try and understand that they may be a tutor for like 2 or 3 students in 4 different years doing 4 different topics, and so they may get an inflow of essays every week. But the majority of tutors do schedule it in a way so that they've got different people submitting essays at different days of the week, so they have enough time to mark it. But there usually isn't a slip up, but if there is a slip up, we're all human. And I think that there's a sort of you think before you get here that the relationship between you and your tutor is going to be a really formal one. But I think that once you get here, you realize that it's a rather informal relationship, and that, for example, if you were to 1 week not be able to do an essay for a deadline or need to hand it in 2 or 3 days late, then I think popping in an email and asking them if that's okay, 99 times out of 100, they'll probably say that's fine. And so I think that there's sort of a common understanding that you're all human and you're going to slip up at times, but the majority of the times, tutors are quite on point with all their work. They do submit things on time. But if there ever is an issue, then I think that the first point of contact would be your sort of head of subject in your college. And then I think if it gets really out of hand, you don't see anything happening, then there's always senior tutors to talk to. There's always people to talk to in college, because that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry. Something I was just add with that is my tutor is absolutely lovely. Like, he's great. I really, really like him. You do have to spam his inbox. So if you ever want to reply for anything, and if you want your essay marked, seriously spam his inbox. But as Melinda was saying, like, we do have an informal relationship. So there have been times where we had our extended essay title deadline, and it has to be approved by your tutor. And it got to, I've been like kind of reminding him for a good 4 weeks, and then it got to the day of the deadline, and I was like, Jeremy, reply. Jeremy, reply. Jeremy, I need you to send this. I have until 12 o'clock. Like, so yeah, you can spam their inbox if you need to. And I got it in, so.
Yes. I guess the other thing worth mentioning is that among the student body, there is also an active focus on academic affairs. Like at Lincoln, we've got an academic affairs officer. We have like feedback sessions where we can report on how tutors have been doing, how our subject is organised, like both on a college and a university-wide level. So if there are problems that you're not wanting to raise directly with a tutor, there's like other students you can go through, and there's other like processes. So yeah, they're actually looking into making sure they're up to scratch, I guess. Any other questions?
Someone asked about what our insurance universities were and if we wish that we'd gone student insurance instead. I don't know if anyone has any input on that.
So
There you go.
go for
My insurance was Durham. I picked Durham as my insurance because I like collegiate universities. I quite like the support structure. I don't think I'd be unhappy at Durham at all, but I'm also really happy at Oxford, so I don't regret the decision at all.
Does having an open application make a big difference or not? It shouldn't do. So if you're referring to not actually choosing a college, it shouldn't do at all, because if you choose a college, you've not necessarily got the guarantee of ending up in the college you want, even if they do accept you. So you'd be put into a pool and then redistributed. However, what I would say is that colleges that are, say, more popular, then you might be less likely to get into one of them. So I don't think you lose anything for actually selecting a preferred college if you think there is one that you would quite like to be a part of.
Yeah. Also, people were talking about receiving open offers, and what that means. It basically means like you haven't yet been assigned a college, but that doesn't mean anything about your application at all. You shouldn't worry about that. You definitely have a place at the university if you meet the conditions for your offer. So yeah, don't worry about it, and congrats on your offer.
I actually got an open offer, and I was one of those applicants that were just like, when am I going to find out about my college? Like, I constantly kept like emailing in, like once I got my results and things like that, because they were quite slow to let you know. But the important thing to remember is that you have a place once you've gotten your offer, and it doesn't really matter which college it's at. Everyone sort of falls in love with the college that they end up at. And although I had actually applied to Hertford, had been interviewed at Hertford, Balliol and St. Cat's, I ended up actually getting an offer from University College. So you really, like, there's no way of looking into it. And then after speaking to my tutors after, they said it's an absolutely random thing. There's no such sort of, they don't sit there and go, okay, let's just put this person on the pool and not take this person. It's completely random about which of, so if a college has, let's say 5 spaces and they've got 6 people that they want to take, it's completely random at which person actually ends up with the open offer. So there's no point reading into it or looking at, or sort of reading it in any other context.
So someone was asking about the societies that we've joined and how we found out about them. In Freshers Week, which is the week before term starts in October, there's the Freshers Fair, in which loads of societies and clubs have different stalls, and they sort of promote all their events. And then you can go and sign up to 1,000,001 different societies, clubs, like sporting clubs, and you can get involved like as much as or as little as you want. And then you just end up with like loads of emails from loads of different subscriptions. And I've had emails from like skydiving or scuba diving it was. And I don't even remember signing up to that, but you will sign up to loads of things. And then you can always just choose to not go in the end. But there are loads of different things to do. There are loads of different sporting events, loads of different societies. And I'd recommend that whichever university you go to, that you get involved as much as you can.
Okay. Anyone want to take something?
We've actually had like a few questions about how you join Oxvlog.
Yeah.
And I think like at the end of like before like next academic year starts, you're saying make an application, and then you just send a video application. Doesn't have to be an amazing, it just has to, you just have to talk about yourself and what you might talk about on Oxvlog. And then that's probably it, yeah.
There was an interesting one I saw earlier. Do you guys regret studying at Oxford and wish you studied somewhere less stressful and more diverse? I thought that was quite an interesting question. I can see what you mean by that. There have been more than once where I've thought, if I had not, if I'd gone somewhere else, would I be a less stressed person? Answer, probably not, because I think stress is just part of who I am, sadly. But I do agree on that it would be nice to perhaps have been somewhere more diverse. Ironically, when I first came here, I felt Oxford was very diverse, because especially compared to where I came from, there weren't many international people. But now I do honestly think about that. But that being said, I also don't think there's really any point in regretting or wishing you'd had a different path, because past is past. You've done what you want to do, and I am very glad and happy that I did study and learnt what I did. So I think more I'm just acknowledging the nuance in the question, but ultimately I don't think one should regret what they've done either.
How different is the university?
I sometimes think, if I'm ever really stressed, maybe I would have been happier at a different uni. But end of the day, you can't know if you would have been actually happier at another uni. So not worth thinking about sometimes.
That's true. Someone's asked how different university is to school. Massive pause. I can barely remember school, sorry. I feel I might throw this one out to freshers.
I don't know, a lot of schools are very different as well. I think just, yeah.
I think
that I saw in one of the Jake Wright vlogs, who's another Cambridge, used to go to Cambridge and made a lot of vlogs. If you hadn't seen them, it'd be worth checking them out. But I think one of the things that he said, he had shown this little diagram and said that school is almost like a push, where the teachers are pushing you to do a lot. Whereas university is more of a pull, and you're constantly trying to use all the resources or trying to get help from your tutors. It's very it's self-driven. So you have to be motivated yourself, which is why admissions tutors are constantly looking for people who are motivated about their subject and passionate about their subject, because you have to spend the majority of your time trying to get the best of your resources. And I also think that's one of the the biggest difference, I'd say.
I think also something to mention there is so there is that difference, but I wouldn't worry if if it makes you worry that you won't be able to cope with university, because everybody does come from school and tutors know this, and kind of the beginning weeks, while there might be a shock, tutors kind of use it to help in their certain ways to make the transition. So if you think something I was thinking when I was applying was but I find A levels difficult, so how on earth am I going to cope with university? But no, that shouldn't put you off at all, because A levels are hard, university is hard, they're a step up, but that's how life works and how you make progress. If not, you just do A levels, take 2.
Sounds good. I think something that we could do quite nicely in a quick fire is Rebecca's question, one thing you wish you'd known before you came to Oxford. It's quite deep. You've caught us at a very non-philosophical moment. Really hard.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else is finding this, but because the sun's setting right now, my body thinks, oh, nice, it's time to sleep. So I think I'd wish I'd known how different the time of sunset. That's really not what I wish I'd known.
I think I'd wish I'd known that people who go to Oxford are 100% human. And I kind of, when I was applying, I didn't realise there was an actual human being behind the screens and behind the emails and stuff. And they really are, I promise you, 100% human. And we have completely normal human interactions. And everything isn't kind of as cut and dry as application forms and offer letters and all the rest make it seem.
Anyone else?
Yeah, to be honest, I think probably something like that. I have seen some people ask about imposter syndrome, and I would have said, especially when first coming, I always felt very acutely aware, or I always felt like everyone else was much better prepared than me and they knew more about Oxford than me, or they seemed to know what was coming. But I think in the end, everyone is just swimming along and everyone is human, and it can be very easy to have that impression from other people without it being necessarily true. So I guess maybe being less stressed about the idea of what Oxford is or should be.
I think on reflection, what I wish I'd known is just like how much is possible to get used to working. Like if you look at how much you get done at, like in a single term, I just wouldn't be able to comprehend like how much goes on and how you manage to carry on day to day, but it just sort of seems to happen. So I think not being daunted because everything will get done and you'll surprise yourself at how much you can achieve. So cheesy, but yeah.
It's weird. Just drawing on what Jenna just said, I hadn't actually realised kind of how much we had actually done until I came back and I went to help someone in year 12 with music A level, and I was like, oh my god, like I do actually know like kind of this stuff seems more basic now, but I hadn't even realised that I'd made that transition. But I still remembered how hard it was A level. So yeah, you really do surprise yourself.
I think I go back and tell myself that anything like things never go as bad as you think they're gonna go. So tutorials never go as badly as you think they're gonna go. Any public speaking you have to do never goes as badly. You have to think as you think it's going to do. Just stress a little bit less, although it's hard to tell an Oxford student to stress a bit less.
Shilly Gillies asked if studying our subject so intensely has ruined or tarnished it for us, or just reinforced our enthusiasm, which I think is quite cool.
I'd say as a biologist, biological sciences was definitely my dream course, and to be honest, I felt I ended on a high with biology, so there was at no point where I felt biology was ruined for me. Now doing a PhD, which is 3 years of working on a very highly specific thing, there have been times where I have felt quite fed up of my subject, but that generally coincides with the times when I've just hit a wall and nothing I'm trying seems to be working. So now that everything is working again, then I seem to have found that enthusiasm. So my conclusion is, as long as I'm doing lots of different things and things are going forwards, at least biology is definitely the right subject for me, and I'm as enthusiastic as ever about it.
I think I've definitely become a lot more enthusiastic about medicine, because medicine is obviously not a subject that you would have done before university. So I never really knew exactly what it was like to study it. If I'd been doing another course, which say I'd done at A-level, it might be slightly different, but because I'm doing something that's new and something that I know that I want to do in the future, it's just so much fun, and I just learn something new every day, and it's just incredible. So definitely much more enthusiastic.
Joe's asked what our best memory is from our time at Oxford, which I think is really nice.
This is going to sound very weird, but I'd say when I was studying for finals, me and a group of friends, we got into, honestly, possibly the only and greatest routine ever, where we studied together from like 9 in the morning. We always stopped at around 6 or 7. We all went for lunch together. We all had breaks together. We went for walks in the park. And then in the evenings, we all watched Friends together. How cliche and how lovely. And all of that, I think, just partly having a steady schedule. Every day you were going a bit further, but it just seemed to work so well. It probably also helps that I met my partner there as well. So for me, those are very nice memories that I treasure, although I admit I would never have thought that one of my nice memories from Oxford came from studying exams. But I'd also say that cheerleading were also fun memories, but studying and things going well was a fuzzy, happy one.
What about first years?
I actually forgot this happened to me. I don't know if it's my best memory, but I'm a massive Doctor Who fan, and I randomly got a message from someone I'd like met like the day before, and I like casually said to them like I really like Doctor Who, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to meet Stephen Moffat? He's doing like a talk at the student union," and I met Stephen Moffat and I had a conversation with him. So that was cool. It was one of those like only Oxford things, I guess.
Any other first year highlights?
I think I just generally enjoyed after matriculation just punting with some. It was quite a large group of us friends. We just hired out, I think, 3 or 4 boats, and we were just there punting for a while, just sitting there. And I think that was the most like stress-free that I had ever been at Oxford, and that's just a really fun memory. And I sometimes wish that there was like a 9th week, once all the work had finished, that you could just enjoy Oxford as a city without having to pack and run away. Because I feel like that I haven't had a chance to look at the museums or go to the Botanic Gardens, and I think that was such a nice memory that I definitely want to do other things in Oxford.
Jessie?
I think probably I kind of liked the whole Oxmas period. So the end of Michaelmas term, and yeah, it's kind of when we had like I'd found my friendship group, and we had like a really nice meal in hall, and it was all Christmassy, a whole month early, and yeah, that was really nice. And we went out for dinner later and got ice cream. So yeah, just kind of at that point I kind of felt I think the first term can be a bit like you're still finding your feet, and I think that's the first time I kind of felt a bit grounded. And it was really nice.
And yes, Rob, anything?
I don't know if I have a specific favourite memory, but I guess all my highlights have been when I've just been like with friends, for example, at the end of like a really intense week, or at a social event, or I don't know, just when you have a bit of downtime, it's always really nice to sort of just reflect and be with other people.
I agree. Mine was definitely Lincoln Ball. It was so magical. We were quite close to exams, but it was lovely because literally everywhere you looked, it was the people you'd spent the whole year with, and everyone looked amazing, and Lincoln was done up so beautifully. Balls are one to look forward to next term as well.
Someone asked about how we knew our subject was for us. Anyone have any thoughts?
I saw the biological sciences course, and I genuinely thought it was my dream course. Just if someone had designed a university program for me, that was it. So that's how I knew, and it's actually what made me want to apply to Oxford. Ironically, I never had any intentions of applying in the first place till I saw that. And to be honest, I think the course worked perfectly well. It actually changed from the outline I had seen, but it was everything I would have wanted from a biology course, to be honest. So I just felt I knew before.
I'm not sure I really knew my course was for me as such. I just kind of went with where my interests lied, like what I picked for A-level. I knew I wanted to do a language and literature, so I applied for English and Spanish, and then accepted the Spanish offer. So I think it just sort of came about for me.
Yeah,
I think that was a bit similar to how mine went as well, in that I knew that I really liked maths, and I wanted to do something with maths. Just knew I didn't want to do pure maths. And so I was looking at all the sort of mathematical degrees that I could do, like physics, engineering, computer science, and then really liked computer science, and then realized that I didn't want to let go of the essay writing, and then saw computer science and philosophy, and that just worked out. So I feel like you don't have to go into it having known for the last couple of years that, yes, that's exactly the degree you want to do. Sometimes it just comes together.
Yeah, I think so. I did for my A levels biology, maths, history, and music. because I really could not decide on a subject or an area even. I also did chemistry for a bit but dropped it. And I looked at university courses for biology, maths, history and music. And it was only literally at the very end of the summer when I decided on music. And the reason for that is because I thought I could combine my interests with it. So I could do music and science. You can look at the physics of like sound waves and stuff, and you can also do the kind of the more pure music side and history. I thought it combined a bit of everything.
Scott says something that I guess is kind of philosophical or more deep as well, which is, do you think your degree is worth £9,000 a year?
Ooh.
I did mine before it was £9,000 a year, so it's hard to say.
I don't know.
I put it that way. I love doing it. I think about the costs later.
Yeah, I personally think that teaching, I think it varies between courses and what you think of your course, but I've just found the teaching to be really, really good. I try and go to more lectures a week than I actually need to feel like I'm kind of exploring my own interests as well as what's kind of strictly necessary, which is a good way to make the most out of it. It's kind of up to you how much you put into things, I guess. Like you can kind of get away with, at least for languages, just getting a translation done, getting an essay done, or like going the extra mile. So it's probably worth bearing in mind. Has anyone got any, like a couple of final questions that you want to take?
I saw. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ron.
Sorry, I just had a quick one about engineering. Someone asked how much chemical engineering do you do in first year? Not a lot. You definitely can specialize in chemical engineering, but you have to wait till third year. If that's like your main passion, maybe not consider applying to Oxford. But just look into lots of different courses is what I'd advise there.
I saw Nora asked whether as an international student if you had to go home after every term. I can't speak for every college here, but in St. John's, as an undergraduate, you can take what is known as vacation residence, where you can stay extra days. So some people would say take one holiday where they'd stay and maybe they'd go home for Christmas, or maybe they'd go home for New Year's. And I believe those are days that aren't at any extra charge. I think you can pay to stay outside of that vacation residence, but it depended on what room you're in. So you might have to move at the end of term. And obviously, if you live in a house that's off-site, then you absolutely could, because you'd be paying for the rent throughout the whole year. But I don't know how it necessarily works in other colleges, but I would imagine they have contingency plans for international students.
A quick question that's popped up now is, do you regret anything from your time at Oxford? I think it's quite interesting. I don't think I do. I don't know. No regrets. I think like a lot of what you go through at Oxford, like it's quite deep. It teaches you about yourself. Like everyone, maybe they should have put more work in a certain area, or looks back and think, oh, I wish I'd gone to that club night or gone to see that person. But I probably wouldn't change anything. What about everyone else?
I think I'd probably like to have done a bit more. Sorry, am I giving feedback?
I think you're okay.
So yeah, I think I'd just like to do a bit more. So in terms of extracurricular activities, I feel like I could have gotten involved with more sports stuff, for example. And that's always stuff that I can do next time. So.
Any other regrets or anything else? Oh, favourite cafe or restaurant? G&D's has been picked up on by Molly.
I totally agree.
I also love something I discovered recently is the George Street Social. It's so beautifully done up, and it's really good for breakfast food and coffees and stuff. There's lots of
Is
really
that the
nice
one
cafes.
opposite the Union?
Yeah. And there's Handlebar as well, which I know is a favourite of Lincoln. Okay, anyone else got any questions they want to? Oh, is the pressure at Oxford constructive? Do you think it helps you learn? I think so.
I found in the gap, because I don't have a deadline like tomorrow. Like, so I think it's definitely made it become constructive. Before I came, I didn't think it would.
Sorry, there's definitely feedback coming from there.
Does someone have headphones?
I'm not sure.
Sorry, I'm trying to fix technical problems.
Is anything better now? Oh, sorry, I'm going to mute. I think we might just have to plow on through for a couple more minutes if we've got any feedback, because there might be a few things we can tie up. There's been a lot of like medicine specific questions, and I think Yethrib's covered quite a lot of like the questions about like what A levels she's done and the pros and cons in like separate medicine application videos.
Shama said, does attending the summer program help? I'm not sure which summer program we're talking about, but I think if it's something like uni or any other Oxford summer school, I think that what these summer schools help on your application, they don't really directly impact your application, but any sort of skills that you may get from these summer schools, or be that any sort of other experiences or anything that you take away from that and then using as your personal statement, that would be what's beneficial. And so that could be any summer school in any case that would help. And so if that helps you sort of see another side of the course that you're looking to apply for, or gain some sort of skills that you think will be beneficial, then definitely go ahead and do that.
Something Maddie's asked is that she moved schools for sixth form. She's worried about getting predictions because her teachers don't know her as well. Seems like quite a difficult situation. What I'd say is like maybe arrange a time to sit down with some of your tutors, talk through why you want to apply for Oxford, like what's made you consider it in the past, what your passion behind your subject is, and just talk through what your experiences at your previous school were to try and like have a bit of one-to-one time so that when they write their references and come to give you predictions, they know a bit more about like the full picture.
Yeah, just I changed halfway through my sixth form, and so I was in school for about 3 weeks before I sent off my application. But I was speaking to admissions tutors, and if there are predicted grades, in those circumstances, the school can send them later when they know you get more.
James has said, thank you very much again for the video, guys. You're all inspiration, smiley face. They're just really silly. Scott says, does Oxford ever get claustrophobic? Yes. I try and come home like at least once, if not twice, every term. And I find that on the Oxford tube journey out of Oxford, I'm just like, oh, I need space. What about other people? Do you think Oxford gets claustrophobic?
Yeah.
I don't think it does. I don't know.
A college transfer is possible? Not entirely sure. I think there are exceptional circumstances under which if you really, really don't have a good relationship with some of your tutors, it might be possible, but I haven't heard of one.
Yeah, it's not something you could do on a whim.
Yeah. And in response to Radium 5, I think this will be published as a video too. Hopefully it will happen automatically. Otherwise I'll look into it. Does anyone have any burning desires to answer any more questions? I'm really sorry if we didn't get a chance to answer your questions. They've been flooding in and it's hard to have some sort of way of making sure we've got them all. It's worth saying, if you want to message us via our Facebook page or put any comments or direct messages on our YouTube channel, then just go for it. We'll do our best to get back to you. Anyone else got any questions or final points? People have been asking for any like final bits of advice. Like for anyone about like approaching GCSEs or A-levels, just like wishing you lots of luck and like stay calm, believe in yourself, all that sort of thing. And we've all got like, I think there's lots of revision video type things under the Oxvlog channel, so just have a look at those as well. I feel like I'm just talking now, so. Best college other than your own?
I'm going to go with Legal. It's very much like you. It's further out. Really big ones. But it's also very good. They do lots of kind of access to social media, and they have the foundation.
LMH is nice. Any other second favourite colleges, I guess?
I think architecturally, I absolutely love New. New has one of the nicest buildings I've seen. But I think I absolutely love the spirit of modern.
Oh. I think Worcester's nice. It's got a lake, so
Worcester's lovely. Okay, if there's nothing else, I guess we could wrap up.
Cool.
Thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in. I think at our peak we had like 78 live viewers, something like that. Which is great, and we really appreciate all of your comments as well. And like I say, yeah, just get in touch if there's anything we didn't respond to, and we're happy to help and put you in touch with people and send links and all that good stuff. And we're all on vacation at the moment, so hopefully we'll have a bit more time to go through our inbox and things.
Some of us aren't on vacation.
Oh, things are going well.
But it will be fine.
Great. And thanks to the other 5 Oxvloggers as well. Thank you all for tuning.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you everyone for questions. Bye.